Hello and welcome to the Soccer Curious podcast, the beautiful game explained, in our continuing series, the World Cup for Newbies. On today's episode, we are checking the vibes, reviewing the USMNT's 2-0 win against the Socceroos of Australia, and look ahead to their final group stage game tomorrow against Turkiye. And of course, we will be doing it all without covering our mouths so we do not get a red card. My name is Brian Peter Falk. Joining me is the acting guru himself, Gary Marks. Hey, Gary.
Good to be here, Brian. I'm very, very soccer curious today.
That's always good to hear. And Sirius XM DJ, Mark Hamilton from the wilds of the East Coast. Hello, Mark.
Hello, gentlemen. From the breezy East Coast. I'm just telling you how much I want to be there and connected with you.
Fantastic.
And that my level of curiosity is through the roof.
I love it. That's really, really great. So let's get started. I do want to say, just out of the box, the whole point of this podcast series is to instruct people about soccer and how we talk about soccer and why it is a beautiful game, etc. So I do want to just set the record straight. There have been a lot of reports in the press about people referring to the World Cup as FIFA. Like, I'm really enjoying FIFA because it is the FIFA World Cup. I just want to make sure all the soccer curious listeners understand that is not the name of the World Cup. The World Cup is still the World Cup. FIFA's the organization.
Even I would never make that mistake.
Exactly. Well, you've been with us on this ride for quite a while, Gary, but like the newbies, the real dyed-in-the-wool newbies would not understand that it maybe would not get it, that it's called the World Cup, and you can just leave FIFA out, as most people would like to do, to be honest. Anyway, so we're finishing round 2 of the group stage today. There's just so much stuff going on. Country Roads now, apparently, by John Denver has become like the song of the men's national team. Covering your mouth against an opponent is now a red card. Everyone is scoring. This is the highest scoring group stage in the history of the World Cup, which is really cool. There's just so much stuff going on. Yeah, unless you're England. We've had our first lightning delay in Philly, which everyone was so concerned the weather was going to be such a huge factor. We've only had one game delay so far. And, of course, the mighty U.S. is 2 for 2. And I don't know about you, I'm sick about talking about the World Cup in 1930, but it is the first time that the U.S. has won 2 group stage games since they played soccer in top hats in 1930. So I hope we can talk about that again.
Uruguay won.
And that is the year Uruguay won. And it was in Uruguay, and no one showed. Like 13 teams showed because it was the Great Depression. Anyway, so
wait, did they really wear top hats?
I'm only kidding about the top hats. That would be awesome though, if they had played that.
Yeah.
All right, so Gary, where are you at with your vibes? How are you feeling about the World Cup these days?
I have so many things to say. Well, first of all, just being a sports fan of myriad other sports, I did notice that the leading scorer, tied for the leading scorer on the U.S. team, is the other team, which has scored 2 out of 6 goals. 33% of the U.S.'s scoring force is the other team. You don't see a lot of sports like that. So
that is true. The U.S. has benefited from 2 own goals in 2 games, which is pretty amazing.
It's the first time in FIFA history, actually, that a team has gotten 2 own goals in 2 consecutive games.
There you go. There we are with that
dropping
history
a little bit of soccer knowledge on you.
Thank you. Mark, how are you feeling? What are the vibes out there?
Well, I've transferred from the big city to the island, and the vibes are decidedly different. And I'll be honest, I'm trying to watch every match, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed by how little scoring I'm seeing in so many of these matches. A lot of 0-0. England continually coming to a draw. Are they in danger of not advancing?
No. That England will advance, but for those of you who are newer to soccer, you have to understand something about the English team. There's no gray cloud that they will not celebrate in England. The English team is known for all sorts of like last-second collapses, unable to score, goalkeepers making crazy fumbles and letting the ball go in on goals they should have saved. All that stuff happens in England. That whole it's that great combo of stiff upper lip and nothing is ever going to go right for us. Is how England has often been defined. This team, coached by a German, by the way, Thomas Tuchel, is trying to break that mold, and it's a great team. Great team. I don't think that their last 0-0 draw against a more inferior opponent in Ghana is any indication of how they're going to do later in the tournament. I think they will. I think they might be able to break the curse and get pretty far, to be honest. But yeah, the torrid pace of scoring that started, frankly, with the U.S.'s 4-2 win, and then you had Germany beating up with a 7-1 and all this stuff happening, that has cooled a little bit. And now you're seeing some 1-1, 0-1, 0-0s.
Exciting, low-scoring footy.
Well, sometimes that happens, and I know there's always been a complaint in the United States about they're not scoring enough and whatever. Some of those 0-0 draws, especially for a team that really needs the win or they are in danger of getting out, those can be, in my opinion, pretty exciting. So
I think they've been second. Mexico and Korea was exciting.
Yeah, really cool game. So let's some of those things I talked about at the beginning I want to get into because I think it's fascinating. So I don't know if you saw in this game with Paraguay that Almiron, who's a player for Paraguay, ended up getting booted out of the game after talking to an opponent with his hand over his mouth, which even for those of us who follow soccer closely, I was not read in on this new rule, which is that you are not allowed to talk to an opponent on the field with your hand over your mouth anymore. It is a straight red card. And so Miguel Almiron got ejected from the game. Okay. Paraguay ended up winning the game. This was against Turkey. Paraguay ended up winning the game anyway and forcing Turkey, who was sort of a dark horse in the U.S.'s group, to advance and now is going back to Istanbul. They're done. After they play the U.S. tomorrow, they're finished. But it was a really interesting moment. I don't know if you guys caught that or have any questions about the hand over the mouth.
Why? Make sense.
Yeah, I just think it's a strange rule when you just use mouthwash before the game. You don't have to cover your mouth when you're talking to someone.
Fair.
Well, my thoughts are.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason is this: for those of you on audio, Mark's of course covering his mouth.
I don't understand.
The reason is this. So back in February, in Europe, a game was played between Real Madrid and a Portuguese team called Benfica. And in that game, a player for Benfica covered their mouth and spoke to one of the stars of Real Madrid, who's a guy named Vinicius Jr., who plays for Brazil. He's one of their stars. Vinicius Jr. claimed that player made a racist comment. And it became a whole thing. Like, it got a lot of press. It became like, FIFA had to get involved. There are sanctions. The player's suspended. There's all this trouble. But the problem is when you cover your mouth and you say something to somebody, nobody can later on lip read you to see what you said. So apparently they've instituted this new rule taking effect in the World Cup that you can't cover your mouth for when you're talking to an opponent to protect both the person being spoken to and the person speaking, so no one can say that guy made a racist or homophobic or whatever comment, and the person says, no, I didn't. I just said you were a dick. And you know what I mean? So that's the reason for the rule, which is a bizarre rule, but apparently every player in the World Cup across 48 teams was read into this rule before the World Cup started. Miguel Almiron understood immediately he was going to be ejected. He just forgot. He just forgot the rule. It is not uncommon. You know how in baseball guys put their mitts up? When the catcher comes out to talk to the pitcher often puts the mitt over the face so that they, no one sees what they're saying.
So the old sticks and stones rule is out.
It is out. It is in full force. The other thing that I think is really fascinating, and this happens in every World Cup, is you always have a Cinderella story somewhere. There's always some underperforming team, a team people think are going to go nowhere, that sort of captures the imagination of everybody, and that is now officially Cabo Verde. Okay, This is a team that is, this tiny little archipelago of islands off the west coast of Africa. About 500,000 people live on those islands. They were a former Portuguese colony, so there's some soccer tradition. Portugal is a real soccer power, especially in this World Cup. But boy, they have really turned it on. They've eked out a couple of ties, which no one thought they would get any points at all. They have a 40-year-old goalkeeper named Vozinha. He now has more Instagram followers than any NFL player.
Wow.
Right. He's the guy who started the game with 10,000 followers and ended with 500,000.
Yeah.
That's
and
amazing.
Now has millions.
Millions.
It's also interesting that every male who lives in Cape Verde from the ages of 18 to 36 is on the team.
Exactly. It's conscription. It's it's like the draft. Anyway, but I mean, remember, they're in a group with a powerhouse, Spain, who a lot of people had picked to win the World Cup. They ended up tying Spain, which was a pretty amazing thing. And frankly, in the final round here, which is starting today, if they beat or tie South Africa and Uruguay loses to Spain, which is a highly likely scenario, they could move on to the next round, which would be pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
So speaking of crazy rules, like the hand covering for the thing, are you guys at all, I've always wanted to ask this of people who don't follow soccer as closely as me, are you guys bothered at all by like the flopping, by guys faking injuries and grabbing their faces?
I was going to talk about there are so many crybabies in soccer. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I used to be bothered, but now I understand it as it is part of the game. For better or worse, it is part of the game. I think it makes it harder on the referee for sure.
Sure.
But it's all part of the salesmanship.
Right. Here's what I understand. In basketball, if you flop, it lasts about, 2.6 seconds. You flop, right? That's it. You get the call or you don't get the call.
Right.
In soccer, there's guys that stay on the turf for like 7 minutes.
Yeah, they're rolling around.
Long after the call is made. I don't get that part of it. Surely everybody can't be hurt to that degree.
Well, they're not. Right. That's the point. And so I get your point, Mark. My concern always is I would love soccer to be as popular as it could possibly be in the U.S. And my concern is in basketball, you can sell a foul, or you can, you don't flop as much. Like if you feel contact, you sort of can go down, and, there are players who are sort of famous for that. Not to the extent, of course, anywhere near like soccer. But, soccer has a couple of things they could clean up. One is the flops. The other is the constant arguing and yelling and bickering with the referee, which that is not a thing we do in American sports. If you argue balls and strikes, you take a shower in baseball. You can't even possibly argue a call in the NFL. You get ejected immediately. It's a weird thing in soccer. And of course, what soccer people who are like DNA soccer, they always say, well, it's a passionate sport. And my response always is, yeah, most sports are pretty passionate. But I was just wondering if it bugs you.
As someone who loves to argue with authority, I'm fine with the arguing. I just feel that so frequently it looks as though it gives the player the appearance of, oh, is this your first game? Were you unaware of that rule?
Right.
And to that extent, I could do without it. And then the flopping, who's to say it's not just sort of a built-in break?
Well, it is a bit of a built-in break, especially when someone really rolls around.
Yeah.
When someone really rolls around and grabs their face, and then in the replay you see that an elbow went past their face and they weren't even touched, and they look like they're grabbing their ankle and they're waving. I will say, in this World Cup, the referees have been better about not allowing the flops. You sometimes see referees run past somebody on the carpet and they kind of just go like this, like, get up. I'm not buying it. Get up. And the person just springs right back up. Suddenly their ankle broken in 2 places is miraculously healed. So I just always wondered if that bugs people, because it does bug me as someone who follows soccer. It's like, God, I wish they would just cut out the flops. And there is, by the way, it is against the rules to flop. So right. So that in referee speak, that is called simulation. So if you simulate a foul, this is particularly important in the penalty area where a player falls down as if they've been hit, that it's a yellow card. It's a caution. If you fake a foul, you're supposed to be penalized for it. I wonder if in the future VAR may be getting more involved in guys who are flopping. I mean, it's tough. It's such a quick and free ranging sport that you're always going to have so much contact. It is a contact sport, so there are a lot of gray areas, and it is tough for refs.
I have one question since you mentioned the yellow cards. You carry your yellow card into the next match, and then if you get a second yellow card, that's the equivalent of a red card, and you're out. And with
you
a red
have to sit
card,
the next one. Yep.
With a red card, you're out the next match. Correct.
Correct.
Now, does that mean so when you get a red card, your team drops down to 10 players? Do they start the next game with 10 players?
That's a great question. No, they do not. The player is not allowed to play in the next game, but you start the next game on 11 players again.
So only in that game are you penalized.
Correct.
By being
you only have to go down a man.
Correct. And then somebody the other day was down 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That happens.
They were. Yeah. And how does the yellow card carry over? Like how long?
So if you get 2 yellow cards in the group stage games, you're out for the next game. That is the only thing that does carry over to the round of 32. We'll talk about this a little more later in this episode because we're going to talk about the Turkiye game, and you have 4 U.S. players who are sitting on a single yellow card. So you do not want them to get a second yellow card in the Turkiye game because they would have to sit out the round of 32 game. So we don't want them to do that. So those are likely players that will not play. So that carries over. But once you get into the round of 32, if you're sitting on a single yellow card, it is wiped away. When you get into the knockout rounds, it is wiped away. And the next time cards, I believe, get wiped away is in the quarterfinal. So cards can accumulate in the round of 32 and the round of 16. But when you get to the quarterfinal, whatever cards you built up are also wiped away because they do want players to play. Like you'd hate to have, a big star missing because of some silly foul or a bad call or anything like that.
So the quarterfinal is the round of 8?
Correct. Yeah.
So is it every 2 matches then?
Basically, yeah. Moving forward, yeah. So now there's these 2 knockout rounds before the quarterfinal, round of 32, which is coming up next week, round of 16, quarterfinal, semifinal, final. And they come fast and furious now. We're not taking week-long breaks anymore in between games. These will be on a much tighter rotation, 5 days or so, and then as you get closer and closer. One big question that's come up, of course, are the tiebreakers. For the first time, because we have 48 teams, you have this huge list of third-place teams, and who are all jockeying to be in the top 8 of the third-place teams, because the last 4 third-place teams do not advance. None of the fourth-place teams advance. So there's all this jockeying back and forth on the tiebreakers, right? 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, no points for a loss, but you're going to get a lot of people with the same scores. So I just want to remind everybody what the tiebreakers are as we head into this last week of the group stage. So the first is head-to-head, right? So if you have the same score as another team, but as you're heading into this next round, but that other team beat you, they advance, because then head-to-head they advance. Then it's goal difference head-to-head. What is the goal differential between you and that prospective advancer? Goals scored, also head-to-head. Then overall goal difference, whether or not if I have a +3 and you have a +2, I move ahead. Then overall goals scored, self-explanatory. Then the 6th tiebreaker is fair play, is what they call it, which is card accumulation.
Oh.
Right. So if one team has, 1 red card and 8 yellow cards and the other team only has 6 yellow cards, the 6 yellow cards moves ahead. So
has it ever come down to card accumulation?
It has in the past for sure. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the last one, which is such a BS one, I'm sorry to say, is FIFA ranking. Oh. Because all the FIFA rankings are sort of horseshit. There's all this inside jokes about the FIFA rankings and who is where. Right now, the U.S. is ranked 17th, which sounds sort of fair-ish. Maybe they'd be ranked a little higher now. The FIFA rankings will be reset at the end of the World Cup. At the end of the World Cup, FIFA will release a whole new set of rankings, and I can almost guarantee you the U.S. will be higher. But so that is how the tiebreakers are done. Okay, so let's quickly just recap the Australia game, which I know is about a week away at this point. So we don't have to spend too much time on this, but I do want to point out that what was great about this game was it was much more predictable. The Australia, as we said in our last episode, sat in that low block, tried to withstand pressure, and the U.S. had to try to get in behind the defense and score, which they ended up doing 2 times, one with an own goal that would have been put in by a U.S. player if that defender hadn't been there, but still is an own goal. So what did you guys think of this game? Mark, start with you. What did you think of the U.S. against the Socceroos?
I thought to my rookie eyes, it was a much easier match than you had made me think it was going to be. It seemed like the U.S. got off to a pretty quick start. An own goal doesn't hurt because that's pretty demoralizing for your opponent.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a lift. And in a game that can obviously go 1-0, I felt like once that second goal went in, let's go get beers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, it felt like Australia was never really threatening, right?
They
so
were
it didn't
never
feel like
threatening.
they were ever going to score. They were trying to break out, but they made it very tough to break out. And one of the things that I think, I noticed from the very beginning was that when Australia beat Turkey, they won that game 2-0. Both of those goal scorers were not put in to start the game for Australia.
Why was that? Also, we were without Pulisic, right?
Yeah.
Correct. We were without Pulisic. The Australians decided, the coach decided, this guy Irankunda and this other guy Metcalf, who had scored their 2 goals against Turkey, decided to not start those guys, which I have not heard a good explanation for why you wouldn't start, especially Irankunda, who's a very quick forward who got what you wanted, that counterattack goal to break away against Turkey and put it in the net. They didn't start him. He came in later in the game, but by then it felt like it was pretty late. Gary, what'd you think? What'd you think of the Aussies?
I mean, I was impressed by the U.S. men's team. They've only had 1 goal scored against them, which is pretty amazing. And I even going down the rabbit hole of reading about own goals, it's viewed as more a tribute to the aggressive and attacking of the U.S. team than it is. So I think they looked impressive, especially as Mark mentioned, without Pulisic. It's hopeful. I want to see furthest since 1930. I want to see it go past the semis.
How far do you really
possible.
think we're going to go?
Okay, in the modern era, which does not include 1930, the best World Cup for the U.S. was 2002, where they made it to the quarterfinal. They made it to the quarterfinal and got knocked out. Okay, there was not a round of 32, so they won their round of 16 game. This is the famous 2-0 game against Mexico. They beat Mexico 2-0, which was a big upset at the time. So everyone has now said, well, they at least have to equal that. They have to get to the quarterfinal. I've always thought that is the case. They should be able to get through the 2 knockout rounds and get to the quarterfinal. Bosnia and Herzegovina is playing Qatar as we record this podcast, and it is likely the winner of that game will play the U.S. in the round of 32. Bosnia currently is up 2-1 on Qatar, so it could be Bosnia. I'd take that matchup any day of the week. They're not a great team.
Are we allowed to beat Qatar?
Exactly. Maybe not. Not if we want their oil. But anyway, so Bosnia, and in round of 16, you can get lucky and get an easier opponent. By the time you get to the quarterfinal, you're not going to have an easy opponent. It's going to be difficult. You could have an Argentina. You could have a France. You could have a Portugal.
They're on fire.
And look, as we said in the last podcast, I think Gary brought it up. Any given day, ball bounces in funny ways, own goals. We've seen 2 of those already. Things happen, and you could advance. Is it possible that those guys play their guts out and play the game of their lives and get to a World Cup semifinal? I think it is possible. I really do. The U.S. is playing really, really well. One great example of how well Pochettino is doing, the coach, in terms of strategy, is he seems to be not just trying to play their game. He seems to be looking at the opponent and saying, well, our game is now going to be tailored to fit the opponent. So on the Australia game, Australia plays with 5 backs, okay? 5. So you got 3 center backs and 2 outside backs, okay? So the U.S. is used to playing with 1 striker. Often it's Fuller and Balogun, one of our favorite players. But if you play with 1 striker, that means you have a mismatch because they have 3 center backs and only 1 striker. So that 1 striker is never going to get the ball, and they've got a center back to spare because you'd never want to be in a solo situation against somebody like Balogun because he's very speedy. So, but you could leave 2 center backs against Balogun, and that last center back gets to roam wherever they want. They can move up the field and get involved in the attack. They can move out to the wing. They are a more effective player. So what Pochettino did was say, we're not going to play 1 striker, we're going to play 2. So they put in Fuller and Balogun with sort of his understudy, a guy named Ricardo Pepi, who's a guy from Texas, who plays in the Netherlands for PSV Eindhoven. And so now they had 2 strikers. So now those 3 center backs can't go anywhere because they don't want to end up in a 2-on-2 situation. They want to have a man advantage. So they have to stay home. And that led to that first goal. Balogun, with those 3 guys locked in position, Balogun quickly went out to the wing, received a pass, got to the end line, cut it back to Pepi, who's now running, crashing the goal, and a defender got in between, stuck his boot in and went in the net. So that's the direct result of playing the 2 strikers. So that coach for Australia got out-coached by Mauricio Pochettino, who is now
what would have been the counter-coaching on that?
It's really interesting, right? What do you do with the 2 strikers? Well, what you have to keep your 3 center backs at home, but it does mean you have got to find ways to create overloads in the midfield without those 3 guys, right? So either you take one of those outside backs, and they sometimes call this inverting. Instead of playing on the outside, that person comes in more into the middle. There's ways that you can counteract it, but it didn't appear like Australia was ready to do that or understood it. And that left a big midfield space for the U.S. to operate in and basically, sort of dominate the game. So that's why Australia was never really in it. So you had that 1 goal at 11 minutes with Balogun. Then you have this other free kick that happens because, again, we're sort of overloaded, and we get a free kick on the right-hand side, and instead of taking it and putting it in the air for a cross, we just put it to the Jedi Robinson puts it to the top of the penalty area. Serginho Dest takes a crack at it, hits off an Australian player's head, and goes to Alex Freeman, who pops it in. Right, and that's all because of those overloads we're creating. It was really
that's how
really
I would have drawn it up.
Of course. Anyway, so positives. No Pulisic, no problem. That was great. Pulisic got to rest. Sounds like he's now back with the team, full practice, full speed.
And that was a practice injury, right?
Right. He got apparently kicked in the calf in practice and then got kicked again in the Paraguay game. And so for those reasons was held out. But it's great that he's gotten all this rest. I am sort of hopeful that when we'll talk about Turkey later, we'll get into it. But I'm sort of hopeful he does get some time against Turkey just so he doesn't get too rusty. But a second win like that, again, the famous 1930, here we are breaking records and getting out of the group as the first seed, which is really, really important in this World Cup because first seed teams, the highest rated first seed teams, are going to be playing third place teams, whereas second seed teams are going to be playing other second seeded teams. So you want to be first in your group if you can be. And the U.S. achieved that first seeding with a game yet to go, which is pretty effing incredible.
So does our outcome in this next match have any effect on the other teams in our group?
It does not.
Because we're already through, yeah?
We're already through, and Turkiye, who we are playing, is already out.
But how does that, how will that affect will Turkey Pullets, are the best players going to play, or how does it affect it? Like if if you're an NBA team down 3-0, you might in the second half when you're down 25 points, you're like, I'm just going to let the bench play.
Are they out to hurt us?
That's a great question. Let's talk about Turkey. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to get into it right after this. Welcome back to the Soccer Curious podcast, Beautiful Game Explained. We are talking Turkey. There's a pun in there somewhere. And so, Gary, you were thanks. Gary, you were just asking about what does Turkey do here? They're eliminated from the World Cup. After this game, they're going home. What's the mindset? It's sort of interesting, right? On the one hand, their coach will be fired as soon as they get back to Turkey, if not sooner. So the coach is going to be in the shop window. So does the coach really go for it to show, hey, I'm good, so they can get a job somewhere else? You have some big-time players in Turkey. Arda Güler, who's is like this amazing phenom who plays for Real Madrid, had a terrible World Cup. Terrible. Ineffective. Does he want to show, hey, I still got it? So are they going to go and play their top lineup? Probably. There's no reason not to. So you're going to get Turkey's best, which, again, in this World Cup has not been good. So at the same time, you have the U.S. We don't need to win this game at all. The outcome of this game has no impact on the U.S.'s World Cup. So what do you do, right? So here's you guys are the coaches. So let's put this out there. Currently, you have 4 players who are starters. You have Tyler Adams, who's our defensive mid, critical player, really important player. You have Flo Balogun. We all know how important he is. You have Chris Richards, our best central defender, and you have Jedi Robinson, who plays the left defense, all on a 1 yellow card.
But those yellow cards don't carry over into the
knockout. But if you get one in the Turkey game, you have to sit in the round of 32. If you get a second one in the Turkey game, you will have gotten 2 yellow cards in the group stage, which means you have to sit out for the next game.
No, so they all sit.
Right. So conventional wisdom is all 4 of those guys, who are four of our most important players, honestly, all have to sit. So what do you do with Pulisic? Pulisic hasn't played. He didn't play the entire second half of Paraguay. He came out at the half. He didn't play any of the game against Australia. He's now back to full training. Do you play Pulisic, or do you get him even more rest and wait for him to come back in round of 32?
I play him for, start him.
And I pull him at a yellow card or at halftime.
Yeah, or if there are up more than 2 goals.
Got it.
Or if he
I think all of those are good ideas. Pulisic isn't super likely to get a yellow card. He's more likely to get fouled, and the person getting a yellow card who fouled him. But he does. It has happened. So yeah, I agree with that. I think you start him, even if he just plays the first 30 minutes. In all honesty, you're just getting him some game speed practice. Yeah. Against a team that will not. Turkey is not a team that's going to sit in a low block. So they are going to play you. They are going to play you toe to toe. They're going to try to, string passes together and play sort of proper football, as it were. They're not going to park the bus. So it'll be a good run out for Pulisic. That's his kind of game. He loves a game like that. He does very well in games like that. So there's that. There is also this idea of the buy-in from the bench, right? You have these players. Sometimes people go through a World Cup. They do all the stuff to get to a World Cup. They get named on the World Cup team, and they don't play a minute. So just psychologically, is there an advantage to playing bench players and giving them a run out in a game that doesn't mean anything? Just so that they get the experience of playing. You may need them later if somebody gets an injury and they have to be replaced. I think you can read a little bit too much into that. These guys are professionals. They play all over the world. They get paid to play soccer. They know what's going on. They know what the hierarchy is. That being said, it is an opportunity to see what the rest of the U.S. has, which is sort of cool. And then you have Turkiye, right? So Turkiye, again, they went from like a dark horse favorite. Everybody was like, oof, we're scared to play Turkiye. I will tell you, and this is interesting, before the World Cup started, there were these rankings happening of like, what are the toughest groups to the easiest groups, right? Groups A through L, 12 groups. And if you looked at all like the FIFA ranking and all the analytics and how they had been doing in qualifying and all that stuff, I think the toughest group was Group L, which was the group that has England in it. The second toughest group was Group D, U.S., Australia, Paraguay, Turkey. And a lot of that had to do with the fact Turkey, they have to qualify in Europe, which is the toughest place to qualify, right? So they had to do a play-in. So they weren't even on getting into the World Cup until like March. Everyone else knew way in advance. So the U.S. is known for a long time because they're the host, and the host always gets in. So when Turkey got announced, everybody was like, woof. It's not quite the group of death as it has been called in previous World Cups, but it was a tough group. And now look what has happened. The U.S. has absolutely dominated this group. Dominated.
Yeah.
And
it's
Turkey,
really impressive.
which was a dark horse favorite, where a lot of people are like, you know what? I think if the U.S. gets a tie against Turkey, they're going to be doing well. They should pray for second place in the group. Now the U.S. has dominated first place, top seed, 6 points in 2 games, and Turkey's out. So it is why you play the games, right?
Is the U.S. a lock to win the group?
Correct. The U.S. has won the group with a game left to go, which is, again, an amazing accomplishment. Would it be cool to end up with 9 points in 3 games? That would be, again, unprecedented. And I don't think that happened in 1930. So finally, something that didn't happen in 1930. Which
It's
is
also
the US.
momentum.
I agree with you. The momentum is interesting, right? Because if you go into that round of 32 and you're playing Bosnia, which is not a very good team, right? If you're playing Bosnia, they struggle to score consistently. If you go back and look through their last 6 games, 4 of them they've scored no goals, right? They are a team that's going to pack in a low block. They're going to be tough. They're going to have foul a lot. They're going to flop a lot, but they're not going to score a lot of goals. You go in with the momentum of having won 3 games in a row. I mean, I think you're cleaning up Bosnia pretty well if that happens.
Isn't it? I kind of feel like Turkey could just win this one 2-1. Like they could come in, guns blazing, no pun intended. They got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They're all in, and we're sitting 4 of our guys. Pulisic's probably in for half the match.
Yeah.
He scores the goal, we take him out, and it winds up 2-1 Turkey. Turkiye.
Yeah, I think that's highly possible. I also think, as I've said many times on this pod, the pundits and the sort of conventional wisdom Mauricio Pochettino has not paid any attention to. So there have been games where we've had a couple of friendlies in a row, and he has completely switched the team between the 2 friendlies, which no one ever does. They're always like, no, we want to give time to the guys who are going to be our starters. And Mauricio Pochettino always comes out in his sort of like fun, broken English and is like, there are no starters. There are just players.
I like that.
Right? We don't have starters on this team. We have players, and the players all deserve respect. Even the players who aren't starting this game, they might be starting the next game. I would not be surprised if Mauricio Pochettino changes out the team almost completely.
We can have a new Matt in goal.
Yeah, exactly. We go with the other Matt. As long as the person's named Matt, we're good. We just go with the other Matt, and maybe you keep in a Weston McKennie, who amazingly is not on a yellow card, or you keep in a Malik Tillman, who are 2 very important sort of midfield anchor players for us. Maybe you keep in one or both of those guys. I would also not be surprised if the U.S. wins the game, because you remember you got these bench players who are guys who are hungry and want to show off.
Maurizio might take the day off. He might sub in one of his assistant coaches.
That would be epic. So one thing I want to make sure I got to, especially with you, Mark, as our resident music expert. So at the Australia game, it became very clear once the U.S. won that game at the end of the game, which was up at Seattle Stadium in Seattle, that everybody just started spontaneously singing Country Roads by John Denver. And apparently it also happened in LA a little bit, but it really solidified in Seattle. So it now feels like Country Roads, which was one of my dad's favorite songs, I have to say.
I
is a
remember
great
that
tune.
song well from my very young days.
Yeah, oh yeah. So what's your thought on Country Roads?
I'm a John Denver fan.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he sat up there against the PMRC with Dee Snider on one side and Frank Zappa on the other and let him have it.
Amen.
I also like his sense of adventure that eventually did him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you don't want to fly his airline.
No. Hey man, I love how as long as these things happen organically, I'm all on board. As to the taste of the general public and their music, if it makes you happy, a younger version of me could have gone in a totally different direction. But I feel like, you know what, if it's making you happy and it's happening organically, I'm cool with it. It is a catchy tune, and I love the debate between whether or not it's actually about West Virginia or about Virginia, and West Virginia is just the pathway to Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Don't remember that debate.
Never really. I don't think I've ever heard that debate.
I've seen it come up in the socials in the last few days. There's one guy out there who's really going for it, trying to decipher. Like he's been sitting on this for a long time, clearly.
Yeah.
And he's having his
perfect
moment.
time. Perfect time to bust
I can't
it
remember his name, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Apologies
that's
to
okay.
you.
So producer Naren just let us know that while we were recording, Bosnia scored again. So it is now 3-1 Bosnia over Qatar. So it looks pretty likely. Let me see. I'm checking file mob. So, yeah, it looks pretty likely that Bosnia is probably going to get third in that group. Qatar, which is only sitting on 1 point, will end up their World Cup adventure with only 1 point and go home. So that will likely, and again, there are a lot of permutations. The way it's sort of set up is there's like 300 something different variations of how third places and first places could go. So right now it's just like percentage chances. So when the game started, it was like 58% chance that the winner of Bosnia-Herzegovina v. Qatar would play the U.S. in the round of 32. I bet you when Bosnia wins, that chance is going to go through the roof, and we will have our round of 32 opponent, which is exciting. So a reminder, so tomorrow's Turkey game, for those of you listening and thinking, should I even bother watching Turkey? Watch the game. You're watching history here, especially if the U.S. comes out and woodsheds Turkey and wins the game. I mean, this has never happened before in the history of American men's involvement in the World Cup. A perfect group stage. Again, I will reiterate, in 2022, the U.S. played a group stage in Qatar. They were in a group with England, Wales, and Iran. Okay. They tied their first game against Wales 1-1 because we got a penalty against us in the box, which was a penalty, and they scored. Wales scored. Tied 1-1. They tied England 0-0. And they beat Iran to get into the next round 1-0. So in 2022, in 3 games, we had 1 win and 1 goal. Contrast that to now, right? We have 6 goals, 2 wins, and are headed toward, I would think, a likely 3rd win, even with not your first stringers on the pitch. I swear to God. And also, pay attention to Alex Zendejas, who will probably get into this game, almost for sure get into this game. He is this diminutive, Messi size forward player, great goal scorer. He plays for Club America in the Mexican League, which is the biggest team in the Mexican League, where he wears the number 10 shirt and is their most important player. He's a great, great player, capable of great things. So he's sort of like our little ace in the hole against Turkey. So please pay attention to Alex Zendejas, because it will be really interesting to see him have a good game and challenge Mauricio Pochettino to play him some more in the knockout stages, which would be sort of interesting, right? So something to look forward to.
I'm going to
Okay.
make a note with my AI assistant to
There you go.
watch
Thank you.
Alex Zendejas.
Alex Zendejas will be really, really good. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I do want to make sure on our schedule, right? So tomorrow, Thursday the 25th at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. East Coast. I will be on the East Coast at that time with you, Mark. Or not with you, but I will be on the East Coast.
You should come with me.
Is USA Turkey. I'll be in New York. Is USA Turkey. So please tune into that game. And the round of 32 game for the U.S., just to mark your calendars now, I don't have the time, but it will be July 1st. So that's like next Wednesday, a week from today. July 1st will be the round of 32 game with the U.S., probably again playing Bosnia. All right, that's all the time we have today in this recap of the Australia game, the look ahead to the Turkey game, and let's go USA. They're having an epic World Cup. Let's keep it rolling. For Gary and Mark, I am Brian. Mark is covering his hand as he talks. That is a red card. You missed the next game. All right, thanks for listening, everybody.
my friends.
See you soon.